Hello everyone, thank you for visiting us. We are Chino Valley.
One New Man Church.
English Ministry.
My name is Andy Gann. I am the English Ministry Director.
My name is Edward. I am the Assistant Director for our English Ministry.
I'm Ashley, and I'm the Secretary.
And I want to share with you a couple of things that we do throughout our weeks. So we have Friday fellowships starting at 8 p.m. in our English Ministry room. That is for all ages. We then split up into Lighthouse, which is middle school and under, and then youth will be high school, and then college and young adult will be together as well. We have worship, we have Bible study, and sometimes we have some fun games. In addition to our Friday fellowships, we also have Sunday services, also in the English Ministry room. We start at 10:30 a.m. and we also have live streaming when you can't make it. We have multiple different speakers that come speak for us throughout the months, and we just hope to see you here with us sometime.
To give you guys some of our spiritual events, we like to do daily Bible readings. Every day we would read a chapter and do some close reading with that. And every Thursday at 8 p.m. we have a Bible study, and we gather at someone's house or either at church, and then we'll do some close reading and some discussion, some conversations. And along with that, we like to do some fun stuff like retreats sometimes during the summer or in the winter. Sometimes we will do retreats with the Chinese ministry, or we'll have some retreats for ourselves as well. And there's some pictures and videos that we like to share, and let's get into it.
In addition to retreat, we have shorter fun events such as bowling, escape room, trampoline park, or even just get together and chat over good food. One big event we have hosted is a harvest festival in place of Halloween. It was an open event to all ages. You can see Andy dressed as Jonah here.
We, as the leadership group of English Ministry, want to thank you all for visiting us today, and we hope to see you soon. We are Chino Valley,
One New Man Church.
English Ministry.
Bye.
Bye!
Bye.
Thank you guys for watching that brief.
Hello, everyone.
Watching that brief little introduction video. So I get the privilege of introducing Sinek, our today's speaker. Sinek, she completed her undergraduate at Wellesley before pursuing higher education at Harvard University, where she met and fell in love with her husband, Jeff. They've been married a long time, right? And they used to live in Fullerton. They're parents of two Troy High School graduates. Recently, their children have moved to Dallas and gone to school and started working there. So they just moved to Dallas earlier this year in June. Before that, Anne was an interviewer for Harvard for the Southern California area for 20 years.
20 years.
20 years, yeah. So a long time. So she knows a lot of cool things. So why don't you all join me in a round of applause as we welcome Anne. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So, I'm Anne. I'm the
Hi, everyone. So good to see you. Can you hear me all right? Is the sound fine?
Yes.
Great. Well, I am happy to meet you. As Timothy said, I moved to Dallas, so I'm so sorry I can't be with you today. And I know this is less than ideal that I'm here on a screen. I certainly, at the end of this presentation, will put up my phone number. You can call me or text me if you have very specific questions. I hope that I am going to address a lot of your questions today in my talk. I want to begin by saying, first of all, I'd love to join your church. I'm looking for a church here now. So it's not easy. I want to begin by saying some of the things I'm going to tell you today are a little bit frightening for college admissions. It's a tough climate out there. And so I hope that I'm going to share with you reasons to not be fearful, ways that you can help raise your students, or as a student, the way you can approach college admissions in a more sane way, understanding where you fit, and that this is a very long journey of your life, that where you begin is not necessarily where you end. So as Timothy said, I started at Wellesley College, an amazing school. Maybe a lot of you have never heard of it. Hillary Clinton went to school there. I have to always say that. But I wasn't ready to go to Harvard as an undergrad. I needed a little more time. I needed a small school environment to get where I needed to go. So all in good time, I made it to Harvard, but it took me a while to get there. So not everyone is ready at 17 to go to an Ivy League school. Let me give you a little bit of background about today's college admissions climate. I'm terrible at numbers, so I'm going to give you very round numbers here. I'm a humanities person, but I want to let you know that there are roughly 30,000 high schools in this country and 3,000 colleges. But I don't know why it is, and particularly in the Asian community, we want our kids to go to the top 10 universities, but there's 3,000 of them. So if you took the valedictorian at each of those 30,000 high schools, in other words, the number one student at each of those schools, and you placed them at the top 10 universities, actually, I'm going to make it even better. Let's place them at the top 30 universities. Okay. And I know some of you would say that the number 26 college in this country is not acceptable for your son or daughter, but let's just go with my numbers. If I placed the valedictorian at each one of those schools, I would have 1,000 students at each of those colleges. And half of those schools don't even have 1,000 students in their freshman class. So if I took the top 10 students at each of those colleges, or at each of those high schools, I would end up with 10,000 students in each of those top 30 universities. So you can see the numbers aren't going to work out. And if you are somebody who says, well, I'm number 30 or I'm number 300 in my class, those numbers aren't going to work. So I want you to think about this differently. I think Andy said at the beginning of this that you don't have to take SATs anymore. Actually, Andy, that's incorrect. Maybe that was Timothy. I can't remember now, but even though colleges are now test optional, it doesn't mean that they don't want to see your scores. In fact, they actually do. And in particular, if you are an Asian member of an admissions class, they would likely assume, whether correct or not, that you can, number one, afford to take the test, that the test is available in your area, and that if you don't take it, they know that it means that you actually took it, but you didn't get a good score. So unfortunately for majority students, and I would say that an Asian student in this country is overrepresented in the college admissions applications, they would expect you to take the SAT score. Next year, starting actually this March, the SAT is going to be online, so it makes it even more accessible. So they really are looking for you to take that test. The Supreme Court has really literally in the last month just eliminated affirmative action. So a lot of, I'll talk to a lot of my students and say, oh, wow, okay, what do you think about that? And they say, oh, it sounds great. It's going to be much better for me. Now they can't discriminate against me in admissions. Unfortunately, colleges are finding new ways to ask students about their race and ethnicity. They're asking actual application questions about your race. And you, as a student, are going to have to find ways to talk about your race and ethnicity in a positive way in your college admissions questions. And then lastly, I want you to know that first generation status makes a huge difference in college admissions. And I suspect quite a few of you are actually considered first generation at certain schools. So at Harvard, in the freshman class, 19.4, nearly 20% of the freshman class at Harvard is a first generation college student. Harvard thinks of first generation college students as students who apply, whose parents have not completed 4 years of college. The University of California system thinks of first generation differently. They believe that a first generation student is a student whose parents have not gone to college in America. So if your father is a PhD graduate in China, you would still be considered first generation at the University of California. And I would tell you, use that as to your advantage. If you know that about 20% of these classes at the University of California are first generation, you should write an essay about being a first generation student. So why is getting in so difficult right now? California students are the most overrepresented in the college admission pool. So they don't need another California student at most of these colleges. They have too many of them already. They'd like you to be from Alaska or Idaho. So if anyone wants to move, it's a good time. Do it now. And then, are you applying to a popular major? Are you an engineering student, a computer science student? Right now, business is almost eclipsing engineering at colleges for popularity. And by the way, if you, for instance, apply in economics to a school like the University of Pennsylvania, the dirty little secret of admissions is that they say that they actually will be rejecting you as an economics major because they think that you're trying to do a backdoor to get into their Wharton School of Business. So little things that you should know. Choosing popular majors, being overrepresented, those are things that stack the odds against you, unfortunately, in admissions. You want more lottery tickets to this crazy lottery. And I'll teach you how to do that in a little bit. The other thing is that you need to know that athletes often will take up 100 to 200 spots in a class. Those students are guaranteed their spots. And if you're not an athlete, you may not then qualify. You actually, if you look at the numbers of the students who are in those classes, you might say, oh, look, Harvard has 1,600 students in their freshman class, but already 200 of those spots are taken up by athletes. So you're looking at 1,400 spots. But then they also have a lot of legacy students. So students whose parents attended the school. And of course, Harvard would like to have those students. And I'm not just talking about Harvard, I'm talking about any school. But I have experience with Harvard. They want to have legacies because those families tend to give more money to the school. It's a business proposition. So unfortunately, that's another probably couple of hundred students that might be taken out of the class. So you can see suddenly the numbers that you thought were there are actually smaller. And then I just want you to know that colleges have enrollment priorities in diversity. It is important for a college, and I would agree with this. You don't want to go to a school where everyone is Asian, or maybe you do, but colleges don't want. Part of your experience going to college is meeting new people who have different experiences. So colleges, rightly so, want a very diverse class, but that diversity may not always be just about pure excellence. It could be about making sure that we have an art history major, as well as a business major, as well as a philosophy major in the class. And then that we have somebody who's representing Alaska and Texas and Indiana in the class. So there's all sorts of different priorities. You're not competing just with straight A students. You're competing with a mosaic that the college wants to put together. What do colleges want? So I want you to know that admissions officers aren't generally who you imagine. They aren't old ladies like me or old white guys, the picture that you imagine. In fact, I've recently been sending out a picture, which I unfortunately can't share here because I don't like to tell you who my students are. But recently, one of my students sent me a note. He went to Stanford, or he's headed to Stanford this fall. And he went to visit Stanford and he got to meet the admissions officer who read his file and admitted him. And he took a picture and sent it to me. That admissions officer was 23 years old, looked like she was tiny compared to my student, but she was 23 years old. Are you going to write a admissions officer who is 23 an essay that is very formal, that you would act as if you were speaking to an adult? Are you going to try to be more relational with that admissions officer? Remember, admissions officers aren't paid a lot of money. It's a burnout job. They're traveling half the year and then reading maybe 100 applications a day when they're not traveling. It's a burnout job. So a lot of times it is a young student who's recently graduated who spends a couple of years reading applications for the college that they graduated from before they take their next career step. So are you trying to impress them, or are you wanting to be relational and show them that you have impact in your community? So are you memorable? If I'm reading 100 applications a day, fast, in 4 minutes, so all that time that you spent writing that application, they're going to read you in 4 minutes. So on the UC application, you've written 4 350-word essays. It takes me 4 minutes to read a 350-word essay carefully, but now I have to read 4 of those, plus your grade record, plus your families, plus at most colleges, your 3 recommenders, your 2 teachers and your counselor. There's a lot of reading to do, you have to do. So can you memorably impress them with your essays and your activities lists? That means put your most impressive things first, not last. You're not doing things in chronological order in your activities list. You're putting the most memorable, the most important things right up front. A lot of students don't even think to do that. And then in your essay, if you have not told me the main point of your essay in the first 3 sentences, I might stop reading. Don't bury your important theme or your important piece of information that you're trying to let the admissions officer understand about you in the middle of your essay because you're trying to tell a lovely story. No, tell them that important piece of information in the first line of your essay, so that if they don't read or they're just skimming the rest, they at least get that piece of information about you. I think that you are doing the best job on an admissions application if you're likable. So likable doesn't mean bragging about yourself. It means proving your point. So for instance, in my next bullet point, do you have proof of your interest or your intended major? Do you know what you want to study? I had somebody ask a question in advance of this, is how do I find my major? Well, that's difficult. I didn't know what I wanted to do at 17 years old, but I could look at clues to what I did a lot of. So for instance, I love to read all the time. I devoured books. So in a week, I'd probably read a couple of novels, and I did a lot of writing. In fact, I tried to write articles and did publish articles in 17 magazine all throughout my high school years. That's pretty strong evidence that I should be an English major, or that one of my majors should have some strong evidence of writing in it. So what do you like to do? Okay, if you're going to say I like to play video games, I'd say, okay, maybe there's a major in there. But are you interested in the companies that create games? Are you interested in running a team? So maybe you want to study management or business in that area. Or are you more interested in how they got that imagery to move 3D in a 3D environment? Maybe you're actually a programmer. So if you do that, then do you have proof in your high school years, as I did, writing articles, trying to send them into a magazine for publication? Do I have proof of my interest? Because that's the best way to show a college that you actually have something to offer them. So college fit versus college rank. I just want to make sure that you understand, so many of us right now are really focused on college rank. So it's back to that, what I told you at the beginning. Are you going to the top 30 schools? Well, actually, I tell my students that colleges that have a 25% acceptance rate or lower are actually reach colleges even for a valedictorian at a high school. In other words, if you have a 25% acceptance rate at your school, that means 75% of the students that apply, so 75 out of every 100 applicants, are rejected. So you can't really bet that you're going to win that lottery just because your grades and test scores are good. You might actually be competing with thousands of other students with perfect grades and perfect test scores or near perfect test scores. So if you have a college list that has only colleges with 25% acceptance rate or lower, you don't have a good college list. The top 30 schools in the country generally have lower than 10% acceptance rate. So if you're only focused on those top 30, I would not consider your list a smart list for colleges. I want you to find a college that fits you. So for me, it's not where you go to college, it's what you do with where you go to college. So I say to students, do you care about what the food is like at your college? So for instance, UCLA is known for its fantastic food. Duke is #1 in the nation for its food. And if there's a Berkeley student in the room, they could probably tell you it's some of the worst food out there. Well, you're eating 3 meals a day, so food actually should matter to you. So find out about the food. I think Timothy told you that I married a guy from Harvard that I met when I was at Harvard. So, are the boys cute? That's actually a criteria that you should pay attention to, or vice versa if you're a boy. I met a cute guy, happened to be a cute basketball player. I ended up having kids who ended up playing basketball in college. So those kinds of things actually matter. These are going to be your friends for life. So it's not just about finding a school that has great academic opportunities. You want to find an alumni network that's going to help you find a job. You want to find out if your class size, if you're ever going to meet the professor, or if you're going to be in a class, for instance, a beginning chemistry class at Berkeley that might have 700 students in it. Where do you feel comfortable? It's important for you to find that out. This is my daughter, Brooke. You can tell she looks just like me. And this is her first boss that she ever had, President Bush. So Brooke was at Troy. She had about a 4.1 at Troy. So she took a lot of AP classes, but a 4.1 put Brooke in the bottom 50th percentile of her extraordinary class at Troy. There's a lot of smart kids at Troy. So she knew she couldn't qualify for the top 30 schools in the country. And, both her parents went to Harvard. And she's at Troy. You'd think, oh, how embarrassing. But Brooke was smart. She had heard us for many years say, it's really about what you do at the school, not the school that you go to. So while she was she chose the number at the time, number 70 school in the country, SMU, Southern Methodist University, which is here in Dallas, which is why I'm here in Dallas, a thriving, growing economy versus the not thriving, growing economy that was in Orange County at the time when she went to school and now. So she knew that if she went to SMU, she would be landing in a city that had jobs, that had opportunities. So in her first year, in the first 3 weeks, she changed her major. So funny little fact, you guys are going to go to school and you're going to end up changing your major. Many of you will change your major. More than 50% of students change their major at a number of colleges. College admissions officers know that. So they take your major seriously on your application, but not too seriously. There's just trying to find balance in what you do. Brooke at SMU then changed into the communications major, and by her junior year was the top student in her major. And President Bush happens to have his presidential library on campus, and he needed a student to tweet for him. So his staff contacted the communications major and the department chair and said, do you recommend somebody? I said, oh yeah, Brooke Sinek has sent her over. She's personable. It was her personality, not necessarily her grades, that got her in the position that she was in. So she tweeted for President Bush for 2 years. And when she graduated, again, one of the trustees of SMU called the communications office and said, my husband is the CEO of Unisys. It's a large global cloud computing organization. And that CEO needed someone to run communications for the C-suite, the CEO, the CFO of the company. And they wanted to try a young student. So, of course, the head of the communications department said, oh, you should try Brooke. She's been working for President Bush. So Brooke ended up with an incredible job. 2 years later, Toyota Motor Company called that same professor and said, we're looking for somebody who has some communications work with top executives. We have a marketing position at Lexus for the Toyota brand, launching new cars. So Brooke, at 24 years old, was making a 6-figure salary at Lexus and driving a company car, all because she went to the number 70 school in the country and stood out. So those top 30 aren't the only way to success. So tell me how you're going to stand out. I want you to be able to write essays that tell me something no one else could possibly say on their application. So if you're a engineer, or actually if you're a pre-med and you say, I published a paper working in a research group within a university in high school. Do you know that thousands of students do that? That isn't what makes you stand out. It's what you could say about that research and the way you approach that research and the way you saw that research differently that makes a difference. I had a student who once told a great story. He was doing chemistry research at the university or at UC Irvine as a senior at Troy High School. And he was on a project where the leads were looking at this from a very sophisticated chemical perspective and a chemistry perspective, which my student didn't have. He was only in chemistry that a 17-year-old might know. But they were doing this really intense work. And all of a sudden my student said, hey, I think you're missing the basic traditional fact of, and he said some simple basic premise of chemistry. And the lead professor on the project went, oh my gosh, that's the answer. And it unlocked the answer for the problem that they were facing. None of those advanced thinkers thought any longer at a basic level, but that different way of thinking helped my student contribute to the project. So it wasn't that he helped and had his name on the paper that was impressive. It was his mindset that and his contribution that makes a difference to his application. Ways you can stand out. So there are many, many different ways, but here are some of the few that I would like you to consider. I want you to impact your community. And for me, the best way to get involved in impacting your community is joining your church and going to youth activities within the church. The church is built in with activities that are impacting your community. And you have a free reign of going to your leaders in your church and saying, I have this idea. I'd like to lead and take us in to feed the homeless in our area, or I see a need in my community, bring it to your church. Now you suddenly have 20, 30 other people who can help you with that project. You're still the lead. You can research independently with the university, as I just said, but I want you to think differently. But I don't want you to go to a program that you have to pay to go to. I don't want you to spend $5,000 to spend a summer at Stanford. That's actually a wonderful opportunity for you, but it will read to an admissions officer, number one, if you're applying to Harvard and you spent the summer at Stanford, what would Harvard think? Oh, you like Stanford better than Harvard. That's one problem. The second problem is they know that you're privileged if you can afford to go to a $5,000 summer program. Privilege is not something you want to signal on your application. You don't want to tell people that you have means. Instead, you want to tell admissions officers that you impact your community. So ways to do that: you can work in a paid job. You can go work at McDonald's. You can do babysitting. You can do reselling in your community, thrifting. There are all sorts of opportunities. Hardly any students work anymore. So my favorite application essay, was one of my students who actually had a C on his transcript, ended up getting into USC, one of the most difficult schools to get into last year. He wrote a phenomenal essay about being a host at Denny's, and that he learned by talking to the dishwasher that the dishwasher, being paid minimum wage, couldn't afford to keep his family in the apartment that they were going in, so they were near homelessness. He learned from an older gentleman who always came every Sunday to get the free coffee that he had, that economically that ended up hurting the company, and that he had to tell that gentleman, please don't take the free coffee. That was a difficult thing for him. So he wrote a wonderful essay about being ready for college and economics and psychology because he had worked at Denny's. I want you to take the most challenging course schedule you can manage. But if you know that you're going to struggle, take a lower level class and try to do better. I do not believe that a B in a top class is any better, or an AP class is any better than an A in a regular class. I want you to excel in so challenge yourself, but know your limits as well. But that also means if you're going to do that, you probably should not be putting top 30 schools all across your college list, because you would struggle at those schools as well. And my biggest thing that I would like you to do is read, read, read. So I often ask students, just checking my time here. I often ask students, what books have you read recently? And they'll say to me, oh yeah, I read The Great Gatsby. Well, if you say The Great Gatsby, or any main book that you probably read in your junior year of high school, I know that you're not reading. So I am seeing a huge decline in my students' ability to write, and I will put that to the fact that they cannot read. So parents, if you're listening to me, the one thing that you can do is buy books for your students, engaging books that follow their interests. So if they're interested in business, have them read Shoe Dog about Phil Knight and how he started Nike. Or if they're interested in medicine, have them read The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, which is about how Johns Hopkins stole the cells of a woman with cancer and then made billions off of those cells. So there are all sorts of books that you can be reading, and I bet very few of you are actually doing that right now. Make sure you make connections between your activities to show your obsessive interest in something. So I don't want you to do 20 things and have a 7-page resume. I'd like you to do 3 things, but do them a lot and do them repeatedly and go deeper into doing that work. So if you feed the homeless, then you might want to find ways to bring other people to feed the homeless. And then you might want to innovate by spending time maybe creating a reading program with that same group. I want you to be creative about what you do, but stick with what you do and do a lot of it. And then the last thing is I would like you to connect with your family. So don't be afraid to signal in your essays that about things about your roots, about your culture, about your family background, about what makes your family unusual. So a lot of times students will hide the fact that they are Asian. I don't know that you can do that anymore. They're going to know. So instead, use it to your advantage and talk about how you're connecting with your background, your race, your ethnicity, doing activities with your family, or recording your grandmother's stories. Take pride in those differences that you have. Then the mistakes that we often make in admissions, in preparing to go to college, is that you join 10 clubs and you have this 7-page resume of stuff, but I can't even figure out what you did with impact. I'd rather see you have a 1-page resume full of things that you did in 1 or 2 or 3 activities. Don't take those summer pay-to-play programs. I love that we all do music, and most of you might have level 10 piano or first chair violin, but did you know that Harvard is always looking for viola players or oboists? I had a student who once did performance with the pipa, which got her actually into UCLA's music program. So try to do things a little differently. Don't follow the crowd. If you're not going to major in music, if you're not going to major in art, don't turn in a costly portfolio or do an audition tape, because in general, unless you check that you're going to major in that area, you are not going to have those tapes reviewed. Your portfolios will not be reviewed. If you are going to be a major, those portfolios will be reviewed by a professor, and their opinion will be more important than the admissions office opinion. If those professors want you, you have a much stronger chance. But that means you have to have world-class talent in order to get into a Yale music school, for instance. We often forget that our students, or you yourself, if you are the student, need to relax and recharge. I bet you're fighting your parents all the time who are uncomfortable when you are just sitting around or doing video games, right? Of course, sometimes you need to relax and recharge. I would challenge you to make that a book, not a video game. Just get in the habit of reading. And then let's not focus solely on STEM. You forget the value of humanities. Right now, humanities majors are shrinking at all these colleges while STEM majors are growing. But the problem is they still have a faculty that has tenure that cannot be fired in the humanities. So if you're a history major, a math major, or an English major, you have a philosophy major, you may have better opportunities in applying to college. Here are things that I want you to do to challenge yourself in high school. Make sure that you take 5 core subjects all 4 years. So I want you to see 4 years of your foreign language, unless you have tapped out of that early on. For instance, if you're in Mandarin and you've actually done Mandarin by your junior year and gotten a 5 on the exam, that's okay. But if you aren't taking 4 years of foreign language, you are likely going to have to take foreign language in college. Make sure that everything that you do, you love doing it, and that there's a purpose for why you're doing it. Otherwise, don't do it. Okay, don't do something you hate. Don't do something that you are being told to be doing by your parents. But instead, your responsibility is to find something that you love doing and then turn that into a worthwhile, impactful endeavor that you can convince your parents you should be doing that. Make sure you impact somebody else's life and that they impact your life. Think about that as a two-way street. Don't just feed the homeless. Make sure that when you're feeding the homeless, that those homeless people, you're having conversations that are impacting the way you think, that you can talk about that. Be sure to make friends with your teachers because they're going to write your recommendations. You want them to know you. I said, unfortunately, you have to take the SAT. You need to fall in love with colleges outside the top 20 that have a better than 25% acceptance rate. But most importantly, I want you to be the kind of person that you'd want to have as a roommate. That, to me, means the kind of person that you'd be going to church with, the kind of person who values connection, who doesn't bully, who sees life in a positive, strong way. I want you to be that kind of person. And I'd like you to bring those kind of people with you to your church groups as well, to expose that kind of thinking to your friends. Mostly, I want you to understand that you will answer a question in college admissions for certain when you apply on your diversity. And as an Asian member of our community, you may not feel diverse because you've been hearing that colleges don't think of you as diverse. And I've even said that in this. So instead, you can show them that you think differently. You have the ability to advocate for others so that you have a diverse heart and that you have unusual contributions to your teams so that you approach a team from a different mindset, that you don't always have to be the leader on a team to contribute. You can be a follower who actually observes and then comes in and contributes in your own unique and special way. So don't follow the crowd. Be who you are. God made you in a special way. Recognize those special talents. So for instance, if you are somebody who's very good at empathizing with others, or you are a natural, clear-born leader, or you're someone who's very quiet but could contribute to writing in a newsletter for the school or for your church. Those are the kinds of activities I want you to do more of. Follow who you are, because when you follow those activities, you're going to do well and you're going to show your natural character. So I hope I've answered a lot of your questions. If I have not, obviously we can open it up right now to questions I'll answer on this call, but please feel free to reach out to me and ask a specific question. If you're worried, if I can encourage you, just send me a text and I'd be happy to talk to you. I really believe that what you all are doing in this church is incredible. I'm so excited because what I just said is not important compared to what the students that you're about to meet are going to tell you. They're right there in the trenches in college. They have amazing things. Yesterday, I was talking, I could have gone on for 6 hours with them, just hearing their experiences. So I'm no longer in college, they're going to give you the real deal. So I think my answers aren't as important as theirs. So I hope you stay and spend some time with them. So I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
All right, during this time, we will take questions for Anne. So if you have a question you want to ask, raise your hand. We will have mics passed around. Yeah.
Wow, I'm so big on the screen. I feel like I'm Taylor Swift. It's like, ooh, rock star.
I think English both okay. We can translate.
If you don't have any questions, that's great. More time for the students. I love that.
Well, I know some of you guys submitted your questions through the Google form, but I believe Anne has answered.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I haven't done all of them. Somebody asked about how to get into UC San Diego. And, you know, I think that no one can answer that question. That any consultant who would tell you, I have the secret and how to get in to any college would be ridiculously off the mark. I think authenticity is the most important skill that you can offer when you come at this. But authenticity doesn't mean laziness. Authenticity means an intentional will to impact somebody else's life. If you do that, for instance, if you wrote an essay about how your interaction with somebody changed them and how that interaction changed you, however small, for instance, my student who wrote about talking to the dishwasher at Denny's, that's powerful stuff. That actually is rooted in Christ. So being authentic in that way, I think, to me, is the key to getting into a school that fits you. That doesn't mean getting into a high academic, highly ranked school. That isn't for everyone. It wasn't for me as an undergrad. So, any other questions on there that you saw that you think I didn't address?
Or can someone back up? Oh, there's a question in the back. No? You sure? Yeah. Can someone pass the mic in the back? Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else have a question? Here.
我有一个问题，高中我有一个问题，上高中的时候，什么 water language 是中国人，他选择中文的话，会GPA 会降低还是会升高？
Oh, so her question is, in high school, as Chinese person, if a student chooses Chinese as their second language, will their GPA go up or down?
Ooh, so I think that the question itself means you're worried about little nuances in the GPA. That would be specific to your high school. I think if you take, it doesn't matter what language you take, it depends on if it's an AP class or an honors class that gets extra points in the GPA configuration. One thing that you may not understand is that the UCs, actually every college, refactors your GPA. So no matter what you are doing and, figuring out your GPA, the UCs are going to recalculate it with an algorithm. That algorithm, if you want to see the UC GPA, they walk you through very carefully. It will max out at a 4.3. So if you're a 4.8 student, On a UC GPA, you're likely more like a 4.3. And you can look at that if you just Google how to calculate your UC GPA. They only count your 10th and 11th grade grades. And you would see on that chart, it's the chart, they walk you through, the extra points are assigned per your high school. So you click on the link for your student's high school, and then you follow the calculation that they do. And even further, you can then look at a website called UC by Source School. And in that UC by Source School, it will tell you what average student GPAs at your high school were accepted at your UC of choice. So if you, unfortunately, right now, if you have quite a few B's on your transcript from the UCs and you wanted to apply in computer science or engineering at the UCs, I would probably tell you that you are very unlikely to get in to a computer science major at the UCs right now.
Thank you.
We do have a student who's going to talk to you who's at Santa Barbara, who is a computer science major. I feel like he won the biggest lottery ever going to Santa Barbara as a computer science major or as an engineering major.
Do you have any other questions? Today? That's the groups. Okay.
我们来晚了，不好意思啊。那个现在是这样，我们开学是1年级，然后呢，我们现在的问题就是，AP 课拿的越多越好嘛，因为我们有选择3门或者4门，然后还是说更重要的是把学校里的每一学科成绩拿得更高，哪个更重要一些？AP 课越多还是？
Okay, so the question is, what's more important, to take as many AP classes or to fulfill as many, like get good grades in the, regular courses or honor courses?
Well, I think that depends on the school that you're applying to. I think they're equally important. So, here's the interesting thing. Do you know that the UCs will only count 8 of your AP honors courses? So if you take 12, the algorithm won't benefit you. That's kind of the important thing to understand. We don't know what the algorithms are at other schools. So the UCs are very transparent about how they refactor your grades, but other schools are not. So if we know that the UCs aren't counting or aren't weighting all of your weighted courses, I think that, the quick answer to your question is get A's, right? That's probably a little more important. But I think I'd rather say that what's important is making sure that your student is doing well and also doing good in the community, because you need to balance those things. Right now, good grades and AP scores are a baseline for getting into a school. They are not the reason you get in. So, for instance, at Stanford, with a 4% acceptance rate, so it goes between 3 and 4%, that means 96 of every 100 students is rejected. But probably 90% of those students have straight A's who applied. So did the grades and all the extra courses actually matter? No. What matters is all the other things that I'm telling you, the extracurriculars that you do, the impact that you make. So a student who, so actually that's my long way of saying, should we value Stanford? Right? If we're not that kind of student who can do all of the grades and all of the test scores and also be an exceptional person, we're not there yet. So why should we value Stanford if it doesn't match who we are at that moment? Eventually we'll get there. So for instance, if you wanted to go and be a doctor, the most important thing for med school is having really strong grade record as an undergrad. Well, if you're at a school, Princeton, for instance, Princeton is known to give, they're tough on grading. So a B is a great grade at Princeton. Versus at Harvard, Harvard gives a lot of A's. So Harvard doesn't have great, or Harvard has great inflation, Princeton does not. I'd tell you, you're better off going to a place where you get better grades if you're going to med school. So maybe you should go to Chapman University and be the #1 student. There are advantages in every situation, and there's no standard answer that I could actually give you. Does that help or not help? Sorry.
Great, thank you. Any more questions?
I hope that you all remember. Actually, somebody did ask a question that I didn't address. Sorry. The UCs asked the question about personal hardship. And I tend to tell my students, do not answer those questions about personal hardship unless you have a significant personal hardship. Otherwise, you'd be competing against a student who might say, my mother is dying of cancer and I have to not do any extracurriculars to take care of her and feed her. Or I live in an impoverished community where I don't even have enough money to buy lunch at school. I want you to understand that if you want to write about those personal hardships, it should be pretty significant. And I pray that you don't have those kind of hardships that you write about. So I would avoid writing any kind of anything about personal hardships unless they are sort of universally recognized as really tragic. Sorry.
Okay, do you have a question?
Yeah, so you mentioned like taking 4 years of a language. So I only took 1 year sophomore year. I'm going to be junior and I took AP Mandarin. So is it better for me to like take like another language or something?
So I only heard the part that you said that you only took 1 year of language. What are you taking in its place?
So she took AP Mandarin in her sophomore year.
And so you took AP Mandarin in your sophomore year, you would be an exception then. If you took AP Mandarin in your sophomore year and, passed the test, then you don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
So
what if I want to take
college would, sorry, go ahead.
So I want to major in linguistics just because it's like, I feel like it's a major to get in. So should I like take more languages?
Yes. Yeah. So that goes back to having proof of your major interest. So, I mean, you don't have to take it at school. You could take it in an outside organization but yes, if you're going to be a linguistics major, adding a third language is a great idea. And maybe I would say using it in the community to impact somebody would be a great idea too. So serving as a translator at this event, for instance, you could, I mean, that's proof of your interest.
Okay. You have another question?
那个 UC 的教职员在申请的时候会遇到如果他们的障碍。UC 的教职员。
Okay, so the question is, do children or students of UC faculty have an easier chance to get into UC?
I don't know, but I'm assuming yes. So I've only had that experience with USC, not UCs, and I think the answer is yes at USC. You know what? If you are a faculty member at the UCs, I would ask that question of your department chair. I mean, right now, unfortunately, any kind of advantage in admissions is being scrutinized since the Supreme Court decision. So right now, legacy admissions is being looked at. Really, there's a current lawsuit that's going to probably end up in the Supreme Court against Harvard in that area. A number of schools have already dropped legacy admissions. They are now looking at not giving athletes advantages. I think that's going to take a long time before they change that.
Other questions or hands?
Hi, so this question is pretty much for a small group of students who are doing homeschooling. So for admission, so do you process differently? Or is anything else that you wanna mention, suggest?
Well, yeah, I mean, homeschooling, it's funny, in the 20 years that I worked with Harvard, the attitude about homeschooling dramatically changed. I think for the better. They really admire homeschool students. I would say that a number of schools require homeschool students to take the SAT, and that would be a real, I think so, standardized testing to show the rigor of what the student actually did. And it's, the only way that the colleges are really able to fully evaluate compared to other students. So most colleges are requiring homeschool students to test. Do I think that, I think why homeschool students have an advantage in this process is that they have time to follow their own homegrown projects. So they are doing impactful things that prove their major because their teachers allow them to do projects in that area. So that's actually a really cool advantage that a homeschool student would have. It's something that a student who's not homeschooled should consider doing. So if you're an engineer, tinker on the weekend at home with motors, or helping around the house, fixing an appliance, doing things like that, that would prove, again, your interest. So creating your own projects and showing initiative is really, I think, a mark of a lot of homeschool students. So that's cool.
Do we have any questions?
我想问一下，就是高中，就是我申请大学，在每个大学有没有就是对高中必须修多少的 AP 课有要求吗？
So for students applying, okay. So for students applying to college, do colleges have requirements for the minimum amount of AP classes they need to take?
Yes, and every college would have that on their website. So I would encourage you to early on think about a list of 25 colleges you're interested in, and a couple of things you can do. You can look at the admissions website at that college, and you'll be able to see exactly what they're looking for, how many years of each college or of each subject they're interested in, how many advanced placement classes they might be interested in that area. But not every college will be that specific. One area that you can look at is the common data set for each college. It is basically a survey of the college's last year's acceptances and what's important to that college. Every college has to put it out. So I ask my students to look at the common data set, for instance, when they're taking SATs, and the section C, I mean, it's a many-page document for each college, but section C, for instance, will break down the 25th to the 75th percentile of the SAT score for the incoming accepted class. and you'll be able to see how you compare. So I would say to a student, if you are a majority student, so if you're Asian or you're white, I would encourage you to be at the 75th percentile mark in order to turn your scores in. But again, if you don't turn your scores in, then you are signaling to the college that your scores were not that level. So one way or another, it's a struggle, which means, again, maybe don't include that college on your list, or try, but know that that's one of your high reach schools. And you probably shouldn't be applying to more than 3 to 5 high reach schools beyond your actual, where you stand on that common data set.
Okay, thank you. Question? I am. I'm asking this question because I think it's really helpful to hear. But like, if I'm a student all my life, I've been like just focused on the top 10 schools, right? And my goal is top 10 schools. But you mentioned multiple times, like I should fall in love with outside of the top 20. How do I do that? What resources, how do I start looking at other colleges, and like what resources are out there to do that? How do I
Excellent. Hey, Timothy, I mean, so you're at the Ivy League. Do you think that's a good strategy to only have top 30 schools on your list?
No.
Because why?
Because I got rejected by like almost all of them.
So you guys, I want to tell you something. Timothy's one of the most extraordinary kids I know. I mean, so much so that my whole family knows him. I love him. That's why I'm here, because Timothy was one of those one-of-a-kind kids. I'm stunned that Timothy didn't get into every college he got into, but the problem is Timothy is an overrepresented ethnicity, a male in a STEM field. He had a lot of things going against him, even though he's extraordinary. So, yeah, how would you go about finding the schools that fit you? My favorite thing is I love watching videos on YouTube called A Day in the Life of. So you'd say, let's say I'm interested in Wake Forest, a day in the life of a Wake Forest student. And you then look, there might be 20 of those videos, or more like 200, of students, who just want to be influencers, who are telling you, they're showing you their day. So you get to see the food they eat, the people they hang out with, the things they do in their free time. They show you the good stuff and the really bad stuff. You should know the good and the bad of each school. So, I mean, a lot of times my favorite, I tell my students, always ask anyone who interviews you about a college what they would change about their college. You want to know the good and the bad. Anyway, I watch those videos, see who resonate. Which of those people would you want to be best friends with? That might be a good school to look at. Then look at their common data set. Do I fit in that school realm? Look at their website. Oh, there's a cool major that I'm really interested in. For instance, for the people who love video games, Michigan State and SMU in Dallas, they both have majors in video game production. Okay, so you know what? That leads to a pretty cool career. So there are all sorts of things that you can look at. But start with fun. Sit at the end of your bed with your phone and tell your mom, I'm doing college research, and watch those fun videos.
Okay, thank you, Anne, for answering our questions. We're going to go ahead and move on with our student testimonies. So first, we will be having Cedric. Oh, that is not Cedric. On my list, it's Cedric first. But okay, Eric will be going first. Eric is an incoming freshman at UC Santa Barbara in computer engineering. All right, let's welcome Eric.
So hi everyone, my name is Eric, and as Andy introduced, I'm an incoming freshman at UC Santa Barbara, majoring in computer engineering. And today, I'm not really going to talk too much about how I got into college and the things I did because while I think I did a pretty good school, I feel like, as Anne said, it was overall a lottery and I'm not exactly qualified to speak on the subject. But rather, I want to talk about how during this whole process, God has helped me out and how my faith and trust in Him and His plan for me really helped me to maintain a positive outlook throughout this whole period, which was very stressful for me. So to start off with a bit of background, for a long time, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I wasn't even sure if I wanted to go to college or not. And I remember I would get into arguments with my parents who would ask me if I wanted to go to college or not, and they would not take no for an answer. And I also remember freshman year of high school, my parents would be basically nagging me every day about how I need to hurry up and just find a major, a path I want to go in, and that like they'll compare me to like this kid or like some other kid, and say that they already figured everything out, and that if I don't start doing it soon, then I will basically fall behind in both my extracurriculars and my academics, and I'll be put at a disadvantage. So back then that put a lot of pressure on me, but I really did not know where I was gonna be a few years from then. And obviously now I turned out to be fine. And for the most part, from back then to now, it was a long process of figuring out what I wanted to do. And when I was going through that process, I didn't really see God in my life working. But looking back now with the knowledge that I have, I do see the work of God and I do see Him guiding me through this whole process. And it was a very natural process. Everything came slowly, but each step felt natural, and there wasn't really any, I guess, like second guessing. So if you ask me the question of what I wanted to do in life 3 years ago, at the end of my freshman year, I probably would have answered, I don't know. But if you ask me that same question a year later, 2 years ago, my answer would be that I will probably want to study more programming. But if you follow up that question and ask me, which college would you like to go to study programming? My answer would once again be, I don't know. And if you ask me the same question a year ago from now, my answer will probably be that I would like to go to Harvard, but I don't know if I could actually get into the school or not, since it's pretty hard to get into. And now obviously I know that I'm going to UCSB for computer engineering. So the reason why I brought that up is to illustrate that it's okay to not to know what to do in life and what you wanted to do in the future, and that you just really have to just have faith in God and trust in His plan, and everything will just come naturally to you. And it might be a long process, it might take years, as such my case, but overall you just have to stick to it. And my word of advice is that you shouldn't really force yourself. If you don't know what to do, you shouldn't really force yourself to stick to a single field just because you look at the stats and the salary pays good, or that it might be easier to get into college with that degree. And even if the field doesn't really interest you, or you don't find yourself like really enjoying the subject, and instead you just want to once again trust God and let it come naturally. Obviously that doesn't mean to just sit around and do nothing and just hope that a revelation will just magically be revealed to you. But instead, my recommendation is that you just go out, explore different subjects, explore different classes, and eventually something should click. That's basically what I did. Through taking different classes, different subjects in high school, I was able to discover not only one career path that I'm interested in, but multiple. And even if you're at the point in time where you have to apply to colleges and you still are not sure what to do, that's okay. Because a lot of colleges allow you to go in as an undeclared major, and then while undeclared, you can explore different options in college before declaring a major. And also, another thing that I would like to bring up is that if you're not even sure if you're ready for your college, there's always the option of a community college to go to. And Generally speaking, especially for the UCs, if you look at the admissions rates, the acceptance rates for transfer applicants are actually a lot higher than freshman applicants. So going to community college is not necessarily a bad path, and that you can actually end up in a better school because of it. And another thing I would like to address is that just because you don't really know what to do doesn't really mean you're at a disadvantage to someone who's already got a plan and got everything figured out in life. And things and that oftentimes things change, as mentioned before, and I'm sure some of our other speakers will also mention. A lot of people, they go into college wanting to do one thing, but they ended up switching majors and doing something else. And also, just overall, when people grow up, when you mature physically, mentally, spiritually, your interests, your thoughts change. And also, when you're going through life, circumstances also change, whether that's in your personal life or whether that's something that affects the whole world. For example, COVID, it came around out of nowhere, nobody expected it, and it basically flipped our lives upside down. So because of that, even if you think you have everything figured out, you really don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. And sometimes when we get into a routine of doing the same things over and over again every day, it's easy to think that the current thing that's going on will just last forever and nothing will really change. But that's a false mindset, because everything in this world is temporary. And as 2 Corinthians 4:18 says, so we do not focus on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. So I just really want to just like throw in that change is inevitable, and especially unexpected change. So at the end of the day, all you really have to do and all you can do is just trust in God, and that as long as you have faith in Him, even if the path that you're going down suddenly takes an unexpected left turn out of nowhere, as long as you are speaking to God and to His plan, everything will work out. And this actually segues really well into our next point, which is about when you are getting your admission results. So in life, it's easy sometimes to forget that there are a lot of circumstances out of our control. However, when we're applying to colleges, that whole fact is kind of being put right in our face. Because if you think about it, even if for all the colleges that you apply to, you pick the exact same major, depending on which one you get into and which one you end up committing to, you're still going to meet different people, have different experiences, and basically your whole future is going to be different. And that's a scary thought. It can cause a lot of stress knowing that the fate of your future basically rests in the hands of a few people that reviews your application and determines if you get in or not. However, as Christians, we also have to remember that at the end of the day, if you look at the bigger picture, our fate is ultimately in the hands of God, and that while the admission officers might be the ones who decide if you get into a college or not, it is actually God who's making those decisions, and it basically just gets passed along to the admission officers. So one thing, once again, that you just have to do is just trust in God and trust in His ways. And I know as humans, we all have flaws, and sometimes it can be hard to completely place your trust in God. And that is where the church and this community comes in. And I'm sure there's a lot of pastors and leaders here, and just people overall who are willing to help you out if you're having trouble trusting in God. And I'm sure they'll be very happy to pray for you. And another thing that I've done, which has worked really well for me in countless occasions, not only just in terms of college admissions, but overall, is that if you ever are having problems you have doubt, you can always say a prayer to God, just tell Him your problems and ask Him to strengthen your faith in the face of unknown circumstances. And I found that after praying to God, it often feels like a weight has been lifted off of me, and I'm able to just be less stressed out about everything. And another thing is that oftentimes the college that God wants for you to go to is different than the one that you or your parents want to go to. and that God doesn't care about things like rankings, prestige, or like how much you'll make after graduation. All that doesn't matter. All that are things of this world. And so if you get rejected from a college that you really wanted to go to, rather than looking at it with a negative mindset that your future is ruined and that you have to settle for something less, instead of looking like that, look at it positively, like that God doesn't intend for you to go here and that you'll have a better future, one that He intended somewhere else. So, lastly, I just want to talk about how after you have all your results when choosing a college, while there are many factors that should influence your decision, things like the location, the weather, the class size, and all that, one factor that you should prioritize is you should have to think about whether your relationship with God, whether that will improve, or perhaps you'll grow more distant to God at the college. And that should be a major factor that you look at instead of things like rankings or prestige, which once again, God doesn't really care about. And another thing that I just want to talk about is that even if say you choose a college where you know you'll have the opportunity to grow closer to God, that every college for the most part, doesn't matter which one you go to, will have its fair share of temptations, things like parties, drugs, alcohol, and overall, once you're at college, it is your responsibility as a Christian and as an adult capable of making decisions to make the right decisions and stick to your values as a Christian. And so to reiterate everything I said, basically the key throughout this whole process, I think, is to just have faith in God, have faith in His plan, and stick to your values as a Christian. And to end it off, no matter what obstacles you might face throughout this whole application process, I want you guys to remember this Bible verse, Romans 8:31. If God is for us, who can be against us? Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. He's honestly a living testimony. He was here for our seminar last time a couple of years ago, and has stayed ever since. Next, we have Cedric. Cedric is a second year, and he is studying biology at University of California, Riverside.
Hello everyone, my name is Cedric, and while my testimony may not be as interesting as Eric's, I hope that what I can offer you today can be meaningful at the very least. And so this testimony is based off of purely my experiences and what I remember from going through trying to write a college applications, dealing with my senior year, and just waiting for college decisions to appear in my email. And so I'd like to begin this by saying that I think that hearing all about colleges rejecting student applications is what really kept ramping up my anxiety during that period of time. And from around summer to winter of that year, I was so anxious. I could not stop shaking. My sleep schedule was completely messed up. I would be going to sleep at odd times at I don't know, 4 a.m. Okay, maybe some of you are already doing this. Stop doing that. It's bad for you. And during that period of time when I was doing my college applications, I heard from friends and families really smart people were getting rejected from really prestigious schools and top 10, and none of them got into UCLA or whatever, right? And I want to say that I personally think I'm very blessed by God to have had the support and advice from my friends and family during this period of time, especially because we came right out of COVID, from online classes, from social distancing, and all of that. And following the lift on the lockdown, I was plagued by a lot of troubles. Like I took summer classes because I needed to fulfill some requirements to graduate from high school. And the beginning of my senior year, and just a lot of personal stuff, like the same year my dad almost passed away from contracting the COVID disease, and that placed a lot of pressure on me and my family, along with other things. And a lot of things just kind of compounded on each other and complicated things on top of writing this college application for UCs, because this could very well determine my future. And this was only applications for the UCs that I wanted to apply to, not even taking into consideration that you might want to do a shotgun application for colleges outside of your state, seeing, oh, maybe this college will take me, and maybe this won't, just in case of like a backup, right? And during this time, I prayed a lot, and I really just wished for God to take away some of my worries and help me, and I would literally take anything. Like if I somehow got like an easier test during my senior year, oh, of course, thank you God. Or at least to just help me do really well in my studies so that I wouldn't fail in my classes or whatever. Or just even helping me write my applications for college. And for a while it seemed like nothing happened. And so here I am, and I want to share with you the most important thing that I have for you today. And that is to keep your eyes and ears open for God. And for as far back as around my second semester of my junior year, I've had friends and family, especially from this community, from this church, tell me, hey, you should start writing up your college applications. Try to finish during summer and do this or that. And I go, yeah, sure, I'll do it in a bit. And completely forget about it for a few weeks or maybe even months. And I procrastinated so hard that I only finished my college applications for UC schools like 2 or 3 weeks before the deadline. And this is a pretty big part in why I was like super stressed out. And I say this because God could be answering your prayers, and you could probably never notice. And this was the case for me. And yeah, maybe taking common advice from friends and family who want nothing but your well-being is generally a pretty good idea, and something you should be doing anyway. But in hindsight, it was most likely God using them to speak to me. And I failed to listen. And so here I am reminding you right now, before you start your senior year at high school, please try to start your college applications before you start your senior year. And try to finish them as early as possible, before you realize, oh no, I only have a few weeks left to write out my college applications. God, please help. Okay, but after you finished all of your college applications, and you've submitted them, and you've asked your teachers to write a letter of recommendation for you to the schools you've applied, and please ask them early and in advance before all of your classmates start asking the same teachers, and their teachers get swamped up with having to write like 120 letters of recommendations. Please do it early. And so after this has all happened, will any of these colleges actually accept me? This was the worry that I had after winter break. And up until this point, I was a pretty good student. But my senior year, my first semester in senior year, ended up pretty badly. Like I scraped by with like C minuses, and you're now thinking, oh my god, what happened? And well, to start off, I was pretty much a straight A student with maybe like one B this one semester or that one other semester. And I was pretty scared that maybe some colleges wouldn't accept me because I was doing terribly in my senior year. And once again, I found them and I prayed and prayed, Lord, please let a college accept me. Because we had heard like freak stories of students being rejected because they fooled around in their last year of high school and failed their classes or went to parties and got drunk and did stupid things. And this might sound strange for me to just ask for a college, any college to accept me, because a lot of my friends at school had colleges they wanted to go to. Like this one girl I knew really wanted to go to Rice University. It was everything she would talk about. Oh my gosh. And it was her dream school. But once again, I think that after not taking people's advice on trying to finish college applications ASAP, I tried to listen a little more and take others' perspective into view, because maybe God could one day drop a hint on what I should do. And I remember this one tidbit of wisdom that Rita shared with me, and that is God has a plan for us. And no matter what college you get into, it is the one that God has chosen for you. And I think that Eric in particular has mentioned this multiple times. And I think that that was another way that God's telling me, hey man, don't worry about it too much. I got you. And when college decisions came out, a pretty good handful of colleges chose to accept me, both in UC systems and out of state. And in the end, I think that while most of us have heard statements like, keep your eyes and ears open for God and wonder, what does that mean? When will He speak for us? When will He speak to us? Truthfully, you just have to really pay attention, and it'll help you with your college applications and your studies, or whatever you're doing in the future, whether you may be pursuing a new job, or maybe you want to go abroad and try to spread the word of God. And I think that's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening.
UCR represents. Let's go. All right, next we have James Cord. He is an upcoming junior and he goes to Purdue University for CS. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. As Andy just mentioned, my name is James and I am a computer science major at Purdue. I want to share with you guys today, I've been in college for 2 years, so I want to share with you guys today how I've seen God work in my life, or God's plan throughout my college career so far. So growing up, I've actually been away from home plenty of times, but going to Purdue was the first time where I would be going away from home from very far away, just many miles away, and it'd be hard to be with friends. So one of my worries was, how would I find a community that I could relate to, or how would I find somewhere that I could belong in, right? And when I went there, I did join a fellowship at Purdue, but I felt it was really hard for me to open up to them. I would at first all interact with my friends back at home just online, and I wouldn't be able to find somewhere where I belong, right? Of course, it would make efforts for me to try to be included in their group, and I would try to make efforts to interact with them as well. But there was always a feeling in the back of my mind where I felt lonely in a way, or I felt isolated, or I just didn't feel full, you know. There was no fulfillment. But then I remember one night I was thinking I was particularly feeling isolated, and I felt like no one was around me that I could rely on. And then I remember that I always had God with me, right? And at that moment I felt like a weight lifted off of me, it's like a blanket over me, a warmth that
there's something that I can rely on, someone I can rely on at all times. And I just felt that I finally belonged somewhere, or I felt like I could be anywhere and feel like I belong there. But I wouldn't say this word, God stopped, because as time progressed, God like let me open up even more to other people, and I started getting closer to more people, and then I finally started finding a place where I belong in the community, and I was able to say that I have like a group of people that I could interact with and be open with and feel like I belong. In fact, if I look through like my entire career at Purdue, I see an entire plan that God gave me. At first, I didn't actually get into Purdue through computer science. I got through mathematics, computer science, which is under the math department, right? But because of me getting into this major, I was able to avoid actually a lot of bad professors. Like I will hear horror stories about like only 5 people getting an A in one class because that professor was really bad for some reason and just didn't know how to get any A's. And God allowed me to transfer into computer science and let me have all the good professors and live a less stressful life. And also, looking back, I also got a lot of opportunities by going to Purdue. And I would have like really easy access to research. And after listening to a bunch of other people's stories with trying to find research, like maybe at like Berkeley, where I don't know, maybe you have to like give like 3 resumes and like 5 interviews just to get into one club. And this research actually gave me a lot of connections into the industry and will help me in the future when finding a career. I would like to end with actually a Bible verse, Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. So I just want to say that no matter where you end up, remember that God will always have a plan for you, and as long as you trust in God, everything will work out for you. And although it might not be easy to understand, or everything will be hard while you are going through whatever you're going through in college, it will work out for you in the end because God has a plan for you. Thank you very much, James. Now we have our last testimony, and welcome Timothy. 3rd year at Brown studying neuroscience. So boring. So yeah. Let's go back in time a little bit. Let's go back to March 2021. I was a senior. And March, April, that's about the time in your senior year when college admissions are starting to come out. And I just checked my phone, I got an email from one of my safety schools that the first admissions decisions of the year have just come out. And they're called safety schools for a reason, right? They're called safety schools because they're pretty sure they're safe, like you're going to get in. And so I was feeling confident until I wasn't. I opened the admissions decision portal, whatever you want to call it, and it said, waitlisted? And at this school, the safety school, basically, waitlisted is the same as being rejected. There's pretty much a 0% chance of getting off the waitlist into this school. And, you know, I talked to a bunch of my other friends. A bunch of my other friends also applied to this safety school. And they got the same answer. They got waitlisted, rejected, basically. And we were like, what is going on? We were panicked. We were scared. We were sobbing. We were furious. We were terrified because if we can't even get into the lowest one of our safety schools, how can we expect
to get into one of our schools that are target schools or a reach school. How are we going to do that? How are we going to achieve that? But I was lucky because I had God. Throughout the college application, timeline, God showed me the story of King Hezekiah, 5 different times, at 5 very strategic times. King Hezekiah, many people might not even have heard of him. You find him in 2 Kings chapter 19 or Isaiah chapter 37. And one of the things about King Hezekiah was one of the few good kings after the line of David. A lot of bad kings came from David, but King Hezekiah was one of the few that actually obeyed God and listened to him. And one time, the king of the Assyrian king, one time sent messengers to King Hezekiah and knocked on his door and said, I hate you and I hate your God, and so I'm going to come and destroy your kingdom. And so the Assyrian king sent his army of 185,000 people, 185,000 soldiers, to march towards King Hezekiah's kingdom. King Hezekiah's own army was only 10,000 people. Any way you put it, 10,000 is going to lose to 185,000. He was helpless. He didn't know what to do. So the only thing that he knew he could do at that moment was to kneel down, humble himself, and pray before God, saying, I can't do anything right now. The only one that can do anything is God. And he put his complete trust, he put his complete faith into God. When I read that story, I knew I had to do the same. College applications, as we've been saying for the past hour or 2 hours, it's a helpless process. You can't do anything about it. There are so many factors against you that you can't fix. But the one thing that does matter, the one thing that can do anything about it is God. I applied to 20 schools. I ultimately got waitlisted or rejected from 17 of them. 85% rejection rate, if you want to put it that way. And each of them was a stab in the heart, of course, as you probably expect. But I had so much peace within myself because I knew that if God is for me, who can be against me, as Eric said. God has plans to prosper us, not to harm us, for he has plans for a hope and a future, as James said in Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. And God's plan for me was Brown University. I'm not gonna lie, Brown was one of the schools I least wanted to go to out of all the schools that I applied to. My dream school, I'll be honest with you, was Yale University. But so many times, since day one I've stepped onto Brown's campus, God has revealed to me why Yale is terrible and why God only wants the best for me and why I belong at Brown. In the first 2 weeks of school in freshman year, I heard maybe 4 or 5 stories of how terrible Yale is from professors, from friends, from pastors. One of my professors, she went to Yale for school, and the environment in Yale, same goes for like Harvard, MIT, Stanford, schools like that. It's really cutthroat. It's really so the competition is really suffocating in the sense that people are willing to step over each other to climb to the top, making sure that they themselves are at the top of the mountain at the end of the day. But Brown, it's okay, yes, there's competition, right? If you put a bunch of top achieving students together, there's going to be competition. But the thing is, we're willing to hold each other's hands and make sure that we all reach the top of the mountain together, not just making sure that only I reach the top of the mountain. Right? Another thing that I heard was I had the privilege of hearing from a campus minister who used to work in Connecticut and the Yale area, and when he was first starting out on the job, he went to Yale campus and he asked a bunch of different students and asked them, how is spiritual life on campus? every single Yale student said the exact same thing. It said spiritual life is dead. Dead, gone, nothing, doesn't exist. Whereas at Brown, yes, there are a lot of non-Christians as well, but Christian life is thriving. You're unafraid to go outside and spread the word of God and be light and be living testimonies for Him and for His love. And college is such a time where you have to learn, and you have to learn and step out of your comfort zone and find your people. I've been so blessed by God to find branch Christian ministry, my Christian fellowship that I attend over at Brown. It's there that I've met some of the most loving and most amazing people that I've ever met. And all we want to do is try to have the opportunity to love and get to know you. I had the opportunity to go abroad to Honduras this past winter. This picture was actually taken in Honduras in the middle of the jungle in one of the villages that we served at. And just going abroad is such a crazy experience. It's for a natural mission trip in the middle of the jungle, I can say that. But those like movie scenes where you like a van or a jeep is like stuck in the mud, right? And you have to like take off your shoes and like push the car out of the mud. We had to do that. But instead of like a jeep, we had like a whole school bus, with like those big yellow school buses, right? And so like we had like maybe 40 people go along, and so like all the guys we have to take off our shoes, socks, roll our jeans up to above our knees, and go knee deep into the mud just to push a school bus out of the mud. And all the guys were pushing, all the women were in the back. We were like, "Father God, please give the men the strength to be able to push the bus." We were there for 2 hours to go and get it out. I've also been blessed with research opportunities where now I'm in a research lab working on a project where I can measure people's brainwaves and using that data to statistically model kind of neural networks in the brain to see what happens when we encounter surprising stimuli, what happens when we see something and it's not what we expect, what changes in the brain occur like that. And food clubs are a big part of my college life. I'll let you know a little secret. Me and like 5 other friends, we created the Brown Noodle Society. We created the Brown Seafood Society. We created the Brown Barbecue Club. We created the Brown Pescatarian Club. We created the Brown Chicken Club. We tried to create a Brown Sushi Club, but that got shut down with her. But okay, and then our next targets are going to be Brown Avocado Toast Club, Brown Cheese Club, and Brown Charcuterie Club. So why am I telling you all this? Because you have to go out and make your own decisions, make your own life choices. You can't expect to be holed up in your room or in the library or somewhere or returning home to every weekend and expect fun to come knocking on your door. Instead, you have to go and knock on fun's door, right? And, college is such a time to learn and explore, as I've said, and like one of the craziest experiences, or not crazy, like most impactful experiences I had was last year I had the opportunity to live in Providence, or Brown is located in Providence, Rhode Island. And so I lived in Providence last summer for 2.5 months. I used the money that I earned from doing lab minimum wage and tax leave. And I had to pay for my own rent, I had to go grocery shopping, cook for myself. And then the very first time that my friend and I, we went to the grocery store together in the beginning of the summer, we just looked at all the food and we just looked at each other like, oh my gosh. Cooking is hard. Like grocery shopping is so hard. So like all the mothers and all the parents out there, we appreciate it. But yeah, and as Anne has stated so much earlier, it's do your research about the schools. One of the things you might not know about were Harvard, Columbia, Duke, Yale, even the UCs, right? There are general education requirements. The first 2 years, you're kind of stuck in taking classes that you don't really want to take. History, social sciences, English, art stuff. I don't know. I don't go to those. But at Brown, there's something called the open curriculum. And the open curriculum, basically, you can take whatever class you want from day one of freshman year. So I am able to take whatever I want from day one. You know, at Brown, you have a class, it's called happiness. It's called happiness. And at the end of the semester, the professor does not assign students grades. But instead, he tells the students, you can choose whatever grade you want. Whatever grade makes you the happiest. And if you want an F on your transcript, then go for it. I mean, if that makes you really happy, then go for it. I mean, most people walk away with A's, but yeah. But all of these experiences, all of the joy that I've had at Brown, I never thought I would. You know, like I said, Brown was one of the schools I least wanted to go to out of the 20 that I applied. But God, he had his ways, and he kind of chose Brown for me. I didn't really have a choice but to go to Brown. And I thought I would hate it, but ever since, he's been slowly revealing all the blessings to me that I know that he loves me. That's the only reason that he provides all these things, because he loves me. The end results often aren't what we want, like Eric said earlier. And you know, ultimately it doesn't matter, right? All those college rankings, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, whatever you want, right? Those are all man-made rankings. But the only rankings that really matter is God's ranking. Whatever is number one in God's heart for you is always the best. Whatever is number one on niche.com or US News and World Report, why not always be the best for you? And, you know, and like everyone has been echoing, you have to have faith in God. And if you're not a Christian in this room, that's okay. But did you know that if you were the only person to ever exist in the history of all mankind, if you were the only person to ever exist, Jesus would still come down to this earth to die for you. Jesus did nothing but to please God, please our Father in heaven. He lived a blameless life. He only did perfect things. But God sent his one and only Son down to this earth to sacrifice him, to kill him in exchange for our salvation, because that is how much you, and every other person in this room is worth to God. We are worthy of that, and God is worthy of our praise because of that. And the night before his crucifixion, Jesus knelt down in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he prayed to God, saying, God, please take this burden away from me. But ultimately, he said, not my will, but yours be done. And a lot of times we have to do that too. When we are praying for something we want, we always think of my will, I want that. But ultimately, it's at that moment that scared even the God of the universe. But Jesus was going to humble himself for the glory of God and for us. We have to remember that it's not our will, but yours be done. And believe me, I shed many, many tears during the college application process. And it's certainly possible that you will too. I'm not gonna lie. We'll continue to go through difficult times, whether it's organic chemistry, whether it's an annoying roommate or diarrhea caused by dining hall food. True story. And yet, God continues to love you no matter how smelly your food is. If you have any questions about college application, about Christianity, about why does God love us, talk to us. Any of us in the green shirts or the orange vest, talk to us, and we'd be more than happy to talk to you and answer any questions you might. At such a pivotal moment when we are applying for college, the question is, are you going to do the same? And say, not my will, but yours be done, or are you going to fall victim to the unfair practices and lives of this world that the game of college applications is. He's got your back. I know that. Everyone, a lot of other people in this room know that too. And no matter who you are and where you are, his arm will always be open to you. And all we have to do is believe in that. That is the end of our testimonies. We are going to get the Q&A right now with the students. This is the part where you can literally ask any question. You can ask them about food, ask them about the dorms, how it is, whatever you want. But also, we will be passing around a board because we have this whole thing recorded. So if you guys want to go back and watch it, or if there's any notes that you didn't get from when Anne was speaking, you guys can go back and watch it. Just go ahead. In the back, Ashley and Serena will be passing out a clipboard. Just put your name, email, all that good stuff on it. So now, you guys have questions for students. Please raise your hand. Someone, Harry. Hey, Harry. Oh, I forgot. We have candy. If you ask a question, you will be given a candy. So yeah, just ask any questions. 问我们什么问题都可以。关于大学 or 升级大学 or 我们的苦难。Go ahead.
Timothy, what was your safety policy?
I'll talk to you after. Why?
高中到大学这个阶段，你刚才说是你的苦难的一部分，你觉得对高中有什么建议？就是说，为了你在大学当中有更好的成长，就是面对着你在大学中的一些挑战，特别是一些华人的孩子，或者是他们刚来这里多久，然后读了前高，然后去了大学，你给他们一个建议是什么？这两个挑战给建议。
I know. Do you have any responses?
可以有翻译，他要翻译那个谁，有点像翻译，可以帮他翻译。
Okay. Oh, you want to? I was just gonna say, throw them into this big group right here. We will make them feel so uncomfortable. I think you'll feel comfortable after. Like honestly, like I feel like some people now you see here, they look very comfortable right now. It used to be so uncomfortable, not willing to talk, standing in the corner on their phone, and that's it. Now they're here on the stage speaking, and some people are in the back. Edward used to be so quiet. He didn't really do anything, but people are so different now when you throw them into a group. Or maybe you don't want to throw them into our group, you can throw them into another group. Make sure they're safe. So this is, recommended. My recommendations honestly is kind of along similar, but you have to step out of your comfort zone. Well, shall find it but you have to step out of your comfort zone. The only way that you can really grow is because if you keep staying here, right, you're just gonna always stay there, right? But then start now in high school, right? Start talking to your teachers, start talking to random people that you've never met before. Like earlier this year, I had the opportunity to meet the son of the founder of Google. And I would never have known about that if I didn't talk to random people. I would never have met these friends who I created 5 food clubs with if I had never talked to random people. and you talk to random people, I think what's really valuable about that is not only does that build up your communication skills and learn how to talk to people, but also you get an influx, like a large input of ideas and just different things. And for new immigrants, new international students, it's all going to be tough. There are a lot of things you have to adapt to and learn how America works. But I don't know. For that, I don't have any. But yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. You do have to step out of your comfort zone, but I would say my advice is you try to find a community that you can relate with, right? So you would have to, of course, start talking to a lot of people, and once you can find that community that you relate with, you'll naturally start to open up more, and then maybe you'll be able to branch out to other groups as well, and you'll gain more perspective in college. I think college is a great place to just grow and develop just in general. Any more questions?
我想请问几位哥哥们，你们进入校园之后，大学里面你们怎么样去找校园团契？我想听听每一个有不同的这个方法。对。
So for like your fellowship, how did you find your fellowship after you went into college? Okay, I can go first. I just searched up Chinese church Purdue. And I just picked the first option. And then it worked out.
So I don't really have an answer for this because every weekend I drive back here and I end up this, hey guys, how's it been? But seriously though, I think you do need to, you have to search for these, because if you don't do anything, if you don't put any effort into anything, how are you gonna get anywhere, right?
I just talk to people and well, I think my mom talks to people. But yeah, and then initially in my freshman year, I was kind of part of two separate fellowships. And then like one God had other plans for me, and so I started spending more time in one and then kind of leaving behind the other. And that's okay. God has uses for all of us and his timing is perfect. So yeah, and I think it's also really important to get involved in a fellowship beyond just attending. You have to serve as leaders. Like I've served as a leader in my Christian fellowship at Brown for about a year now, and I've learned so much from that because there's a reason why in the Bible Jesus washed his disciples' feet, and it's not the disciples washing Jesus' feet, right? But a lot of times when we're leaders, it feels like we are up here and the people we serve are down here, but it's actually completely the opposite. We have to be down here and the people we're serving are up here, right? And and spending time being a Christian is not only hard, it's also scary and takes a lot of time. And none of these things sound good. Right? Why would anyone want to be a Christian? Right? But you start surrounding yourself with people that think like that know God and love God, then you start to grow yourself. One of the things I talk a lot, but one of the things heading into my freshman year, I guess like I always went to church when I was like, yeah, I know that God's real. But then one of the interesting things is when I went to Brown and a bunch of students who are maybe 1, 2, or 3 years older than me, they would always say, praise the Lord, God shiz. They would always say that. And then I was like, and I would usually hear my parents or like the pastor say that, like, 牧师或者我爸妈可能很常会说感谢主 or something. I'm like, okay, that's old people. But then like, now these students who are only 1, 2, or 3 years older than me, they say praise the Lord as well. So why can't I do that? 为什么我还没到那个程度能说感谢主？ And so I questioned myself. I said, okay, what does it actually mean to be a Christian if I can't even thank God, if I don't even know God at every step of my life? And so I think it's really important to find a fellowship in college. Sorry, that was long. Do any of the college graduates want to answer that question?
So I did the same thing as James. I just searched it up. Like I graduated from UCSB, so I was just UCSB Chinese scholarship, and then I think there was only one pre-mark, so I just add the WeChat, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry, like, do you have a fellowship at this time at this location? And they're like, oh yeah. So I was all by myself, like knowing no one in that fellowship. So I just went in, and then it was all good. That fellowship was great. So I think it's very important to like don't be afraid. Like even you don't know anyone in that fellowship, but just go and it'll be good.
Any other college graduates? Okay. Other questions?
我讲中文，然后我也不听得懂中文，我希望等一下你们解释一下我一些中文的建议。就是我们都是才来美国的太久，然后那个他们现在要申请大学，外边也有很多人就说需要请升学顾问的这些，然后我就是想了解一下，因为我希望。因为我觉得我也帮助不了我的孩子，然后我也担心说，如果没有给他一些帮助，让他损失了他的一些机会，然后我觉得也很可惜。但是如果请升学顾问，我觉得把我内心里来说的话，我觉得是一个很好的办法。所以我就想听听你们的建议，说如果不请升学顾问的话。作为家长或者是作为孩子，应该要做一些什么样的预备
Yes, understood. Mostly. Did you understand something? Okay. Yeah, the question is, for those that maybe just recently immigrated here, if their children are trying to apply, but parents don't really know how to exactly help them. And then you guys are thinking of getting maybe like it's called counselor, yeah, for applications. You may think that might not be the best way for you to help your children. What are some advice from these guys for the parents and for the students? You guys have to answer in Chinese, by the way.
Yeah, college, right? Yeah. Give advice.
我建议就是家长一定要很 involved，参与，一定要参与。就我的意思就是，每个学校、每个高中肯定都会有个微信家长群，这个肯定的，中国人是很厉害的这方面。然后I'm gonna start speaking English. But I think it's really helpful for parents to get involved and start to get to know. I think I've been saying that high schoolers, students have to start step out of their comfort zones to start talking to teachers and other people, but parents kind of have to do the same thing as well. I'll have to translate for you. Okay. 谢谢你刚刚说到哪儿？他刚刚说的就是家长的参与一定很重要，不仅是说自己小孩要跨出 出自己的舒适圈，去跟其他朋友或是陌生人交流。那家长一定也要去做这样的动作。Yeah. And ultimately, parents will know a lot, because they care a lot about college. But also students. I think students, if you really care about where you want to go to college, you'll start learning more about the college application process. And come to us, right? Come to all of us, or my parents, Andy's parents, James's parents, Cedric's parents. You can ask us any of these questions, and we'll do our best to help you. 对，反正就是很自然的，就是小孩开始要接近申请大学的时候，自然而然会开始对这些做一些研究，研究一下大学的事情，然后慢慢的自己就会了解更多。那家长也可以因为担心自己的孩子，爱自己的孩子嘛，所以也是自己会照样做一样的事情。那不管是这样的话，也能带到我们这边来。我们如果就不是平常，等一下的话也可以，因为等一下会有家长在一边，也可以回答一些问题，然后另外一边会有年轻人可以回答问题，或者平常就可以来问一些关于大学问我们，或是问我爸妈，或是他们父亲，对，问他们的家长都可以，他们的家长肯定会有答案的。包括公司。no， 你不用担心哈，只要你在教会持续的，我们在这里助力连接哈。我要告诉你的孩子就是教会的孩子，你的孩子就是我们的孩子，所以到时候你的孩子如果遇到升学的问题，就像刚刚 Timothy 所分享的，你只要陪伴他们，我们一样也陪伴他们，也陪伴你，我们一起跟着你的孩子一起成长，帮助你的孩子申请到学校。我们当中有很多的有经验的家长啊，包括 Rita、Spencer 啊，那我们当中也有很优秀的孩子，像 Edward、像 Timothy 像 Andy、像 Serena 等等Ashley 我们都可以在一起，好不好？一起帮忙。好，当然还有在台上的几位见证，感谢主不用担心，不用担心在教会的孩子绝对是神保守的孩子。好，那我们差不多先告一个段落，我们接下来就会分成小组来做一些，如果你们大家有什么问题可以回答一下。那我先跟大家说一下，家长可以在请从这个门口出，然后年轻人这两个都可以，反正家长聚集的地方就是 Rita 在的地方，然后年轻人要在里面或在外面都可以。先讲一下好了，大学毕业的有请举手。如果要找大学毕业的，有4个。Edward， 你没毕业吗？这边有读 economics， 那个读 business biology， 然后 neuroscience biology。CS and chemical computer engineering. And where is that it? Yeah, okay. But before we end, I would like to invite our pastor to do the closing for us.
好，给大家来祝福这个很重要，一定要领受从上头来的祝福
各位亲爱的家长各位亲爱的孩子们大家已经在一个下午当中听了很多的资讯那牧师最后再一句话就是说我们过去一直很期待我们的孩子能够可以成为社会的精英分子好像是在一个塔上面但是在教会我们培养出来的孩子一定要成为耶稣基督的精兵是蒙神保守、蒙神喜悦，特别也要被神使用，这就是我们生命的价值和意义。有神，我们才有价值；没有神，就没有一切当我们被神大大的使用的时候，神一定在他的恩典当中、祝福当中帮助我们，一切既都顺利，凡事亨通我们一起来领受祝福。天父上帝，我们在你的面前满心欢喜，向你献上感恩，谢谢主。
孩子是耶和华所赐的产业，所怀的胎都是主你所赐的。我们在你圣洁的光中，按着真理的教训来教养我们的孩子，使我们的孩子能够在神圣洁的光中行走，都理解你。主你爱我们就爱到底，你是这样的如此耶稣基督赐给我们死在十字架上，以至于我们都因相信那十字架的恩典，因信称义，让我们的孩子也一样传承了、持续了我们的信仰，让那天赋上帝丰丰富富的产业也回到我们的孩子当中。我们向你献上感恩，保守我们在你孩子准备要申请大学，明天要申请大学的，都在你的保守当中，一切尽都顺利，万事亨通。感谢赞美，奉耶稣基督的名祷告，阿门，阿门。好。
Okay, thank you, Pastor Lai. I believe Anne had logged on, but okay. Now we can head out. We have pizza and we have